7 motorcycling world championships to his name, plus a Formula One world title, John Surtees enjoys a unique place in motorsport history, being the only person to have won world titles on both 2 and 4 wheels. However, the Englishman's landmark achievement masks a racing life that has been a roller coaster of changing fortunes, encompassing stunning victories, bitter disappointments, championship titles, and family tragedy. Born in 1934, John was steeped in motorcycling from an early age. His father, Jack, was a successful grass-track sidecar racer, and Surtees Jr. made his debut alongside his dad, aged just 14. 2 years later, John took part in his first road race, and soon afterwards scored his first win at Aberdare Park in Wales.
The most important thing about that first race I won was it was the day that I wasn't just a mechanic putting together a bike and testing it. I was a rider who came together with it. It spoke to me, and I was able to sort of speak to it virtually, and so we became as one. And from that day onwards, I had success.
By the time he was 20, John was the big name on the British scene. He longed to win the World Championship on a British bike, but it was Italian manufacturer MV Agusta that gave him his opportunity. Surtees began riding for Count Domenico Agusta's company in 1956. He became world champion that year, the youngest ever at 22. And over the next 4 seasons, he would win 6 more world titles for MV.
It wasn't that easy at times, because he ruled everything, to even have a little mod done on the bikes. Often he had to rule that it was okay, so you'd sit outside the office for ages sometimes to get in to see him to make a mod to the bike, but just the same, very valuable experience, and I, of course, was able to achieve the various world championships that I did.
However, Count Agusta was reluctant to let Surtees continue racing his own British bikes in other events. And at the time, the World Championship comprised just 7 rounds.
I loved racing, and so I wasn't going to be enough races. So I thought, right, nothing in my contract about 4 wheels.
In 1960, John lived an extraordinary double racing life. He continued to dominate the international motorcycle scene, finishing up world champion again in the 350 and 500cc classes, and fitted in car racing around his motorcycle commitments. Surtees made his Formula One debut at Monaco. Then, in his next outing, he finished a sensational 2nd at the British Grand Prix.
By that time, when I sat on a bike, I dropped onto a bike and I became as one, and I had a program. I was a program there, and I sort of acted first and thought second, because you were so much on top of it. With the car racing, it was different. I had to produce a program, so I had to concentrate so very hard. So in many ways, it was more tiring, certainly more tiring mentally, because of the degree of concentration of trying to learn all the time.
Not surprisingly, his arrival on the 4-wheel scene had created quite a stir, and it wasn't too long before the biggest name of all came calling.
At that time, it was a single man expressing himself, Enzo Ferrari. Whatever you say, I mean, he went along and he started this, and just look what you have today. If you think about motorsport or anything else, there's one name immediately comes up, Ferrari. So, you know, he had achieved great things. He was a character, which was likeable at times, not so likeable at other times.
Surtees joined Ferrari in 1963 and raced both Formula One and sports cars. He made an immediate impact, securing his first Grand Prix victory that year. Then came his triumphant 1964 season, Wins at the Nürburgring and Monza, plus 4 podiums, including a second at the year's final race in Mexico, saw John clinch the championship by a single point from Graham Hill. Despite his success, Surtees had an uneasy relationship with Ferrari's sporting director, Eugenio Dragoni. Things came to a head at Le Mans in 1966, when following another dispute, John walked out on the team, drove through the night to Ferrari headquarters in Maranello, and tendered his resignation to Enzo.
Here was I, striving to do everything to ensure that Ferrari was successful. And I thought, well, they were fighting against me in many ways. So it all came to a bit of a crunch, but just about the year before he died, I met up with him and he said to me, remember the good times and the successes and not the mistakes. And I thought, well, that puts it all right, because we're both on the understanding that it was a mistake for us to have parted.
1966 had been a comeback season for Surtees, as the year before he'd been seriously injured in testing ahead of the Canadian Sports Car Grand Prix. His car had flipped and landed on top of him. John suffered severe spinal injuries, ruptured kidneys and a broken pelvis, which left one leg 10 centimetres shorter than the other. Once his condition had stabilised, he was flown back to London and put under the care of a certain Dr. Urquhart at St Thomas's Hospital.
Mr. Urquhart came in, he said, it's time to sort you out. He said, my registrar is a big lad, isn't he? I said, yes. Yes. He said, I'm pretty well built as well. He said, we're going to take you downstairs. He's going to get one end of you. I'm going to get the other. He said, we're going to pull you somewhere straight.
After his departure from Ferrari, John drove for Cooper, Honda and BRM, before deciding to become a Formula One constructor. His first F1 car, the TS7, was ready by mid-1970, and in Canada that year, John scored the first World Championship points for the Surtees mark. Under John's management, Team Surtees enjoyed success in Formula One and Formula Two, with such drivers as Mike Hailwood, Jochen Mass and Carlos Passi. However, a legal dispute over sponsorship left the team financially hamstrung, forcing John to pull out of F1 in 1978. Following that experience, Surtees distanced himself from the motorsport scene for a while. He got married and had 3 children, including a son, Henry. John didn't push Henry towards motorsport, but when he was 8 years old, a friend took him along to watch a karting event.
Well, the end result of that was that Henry came back and he said, Daddy, that's what I want to do. And so from then onwards, what tended to happen is Jane and the girls would be going off in the horse box one way at a weekend, and I would be going off with the van and a cart, etc., and being partly a mechanic, often a cook in the little truck we had, and certainly the sponsor.
Henry made rapid progress through motor racing's ranks and was widely tipped as a star of the future. But in July 2009, aged 18, his life was tragically cut short. In a freak accident, Henry was hit by a wheel that had come off another competitor's car and suffered fatal head injuries.
After one drive in Formula 3, which he won as well, into Formula 2. And that dreadful accident at Brands Hatch, which, was quite unbelievable. But we're still working with him.
At Henry's funeral, John asked for donations to Headway, a head injury charity, and £32,000 was raised.
And I thought, this is so special, so good. And I'm going to continue. We will put the foundation together, and we will continue to work with Henry, and we will do programs like this.
The Foundation's far-reaching projects have included the provision of air ambulances, a new blood transfusion service, and medical training. There's also a program aimed at helping young people to find work in motorsport and the motoring industry. As part of this process, John has taken over Buckmore Park, the circuit where Henry was first introduced to racing. Fundraising events such as the Henry Surtees Challenge are held at Buckmore and also at Brooklands.
All my life I've been chasing time, and time is something which is probably the most important thing when it comes down to an illness or particularly injury. And so anything which will get action, and action which will stop perhaps injury or death or such like at the point of the incident is vital.
John's drive and dedication ensure that the Henry Surtees Foundation continues to thrive. And at the age of 82, this extraordinary man is still demonstrating his prowess on 2 and 4 wheels at events around the globe, making his illustrious past work for the present and the future.